Hi everyone, I'm Saxon Lane. Today I want to show you some of my drawing working on my tarot card deck. So this first card that you're seeing me draw today is the Ace of Cups. And I'm sure those of you who are familiar with the tarot are like, why the Ace of Cups of all cards to start with? I actually already did the full card and I didn't think to film it at all, so it's done already. Unfortunately, you won't get to see that one. But I didn't want to get too caught up in going in order and having to always have an idea for each card, like in a row, because I get really hung up on doing things in a sequence or having my first cards be perfect or cards that I like a lot be the best looking cards. So, being that the Magician is one of the ones that I like the most, and it's the next card after the Fool, instead of focusing too much on that, I decided I would just move on to something else that I did have better ideas for, and I'd come back to it when I got more inspiration. So, I decided to divide things up into a suit a month and a couple of majors in the same month. So essentially, right now for October, I'm doing all of the cups and like 4 of the majors, not counting the Fool. So I think I'm going to do the Star, the Moon, the Sun, and the World. I'm not sure, that might change later, but I started with the cups and I really enjoy working on them, and I didn't think I would. In fact, I didn't think I was going to do the minors at all, because I've never really felt a connection to them. I've always been more drawn to the majors, but once I started researching a little bit more, I felt more comfortable going ahead and doing all of the minors as well. And when I was researching, I also noticed that all of the minors line up with your traditional card suits, like spades, hearts, clubs, diamond. So I thought it would be neat to incorporate that into my designs, which, as you can see, the cups are the hearts. So in all of my cup designs, you will see hearts in there as well. In this one, it's of course the shadow underneath the cup. And I really like that direction. As you can probably tell, realism is not what I'm going for here. I'm really inspired by like Mindy designs, Zentangle stuff, so I wanted to incorporate that into my cup designs and also make it a little bit Victorian-esque with some pastel colors. Overall, I really like how this turned out. I don't do liquid a whole lot, so I was really anxious about that, but I think it turned out relatively well. I am using Winsor & Newton Pro markers and Copics for the coloring. I already sketched it and inked it just because I take a while to ink. That's sort of my thing. So I focus too heavy on it, and before you know it, 2 hours has passed. So I figured I'd get that out of the way before I started filming the rest of it. I actually really prefer the Pro markers over the Copics, which sounds crazy considering the amount of money I have spent on Copics. But I mean, just look at the shadow done with Copics in comparison to the Winsor & Newton on the cup. It doesn't compare, it doesn't blend as well. But I digress. When I work with marker, what I typically do is I'll lay down like a light base layer, put some darker shading in, and then go back over it with the base layer to blend it all out again. Right about now, watching this, I am noticing My big flaw was the shadow. Because you see, I originally filled in the shadow with like a warm gray 5, and I was going to make the tabletop lighter than the shadow, but when I started looking at the colors that I could make the table, I felt like it would be too pastel in the long run. So I went with a darker color for the table, which makes 0 sense now because the shadow is lighter than the table. But I like the contrast a lot. It makes it stand out more. I'm okay with it. I've come to terms with it. The hardest part, of course, was the tea. And I had to go with tea. I thought about doing water, but of course, tea is important to me personally. I drink tea a lot. Me and my friends will like sit down for a cup of tea, discuss stuff, and it's just a meaningful thing in my circle. So I had to go with tea, which is unfortunate because I feel like I could make water look a lot more liquidy with all of the shades of blue I have, and I don't care too much for brown, so I don't use it a lot. So blending all of these browns, that was the hardest part of this, because I put down my base layer of brown, I started adding this darker layer that you see me adding now, and it just wasn't enough. Like, it was okay, but it didn't give me the high contrast that I wanted, because liquid has so much depth to it that unless you're painting it, it's hard to capture all of the layers, especially with something as opaque as marker, because once you put marker down, it's going to be solid. It's not very see-through. So once that second layer was down and I was like, I decided, you know what? Let's do another layer of brown, a darker one this time. And I started adding it. I liked how it was going. And about halfway through this, I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, that now looks like wood. I have a cup full of wood. So instead of just doing the little lines and kind of painterly putting it in, I filled in a lot more of it. So at the end, it ends up having the base layer, the lightest layer that I put down, be more like highlights instead of the overall color. And I actually end up liking it fairly well. I'm okay with how it came out. Especially after I added in the highlights. Because, let me tell you, white highlights can change an entire picture immediately. So, when I had the white highlights, I don't think too much about putting them in their typical places. I started that way, and I tried to focus a little bit on that, but overall I went more in a stylized direction, and made the highlights a little more like how I do them in hair when I'm drawing my characters, which most of you have not seen my other drawings, but you will soon. I typically do like lines of white and dots incorporated with it. So I alternate between lines and dots and lines and dots in my highlights in the hair of my characters. And I went with that sort of theme for the actual liquid in the cup. So it sort of ties in to how I'm already drawing like the Fool or any of the people who are in the majors. I just felt like it went together better to do it that way instead of worrying too much about the realism aspect of it. Overall, I like how this came out. After I finish this actual drawing, I'm going to scan it, take away the white background, obviously, and put it on my tarot card template because I have already made that, and I've already made the backs. And it'll just be one more down and 76 more to go. I've already drawn out the page, the queen, the cup of twos, and the cup of threes as of today. So I still have to color all of those. Expect videos on those soon. And let me know if you're interested in seeing all of them or just sort of the main components. Like, if I don't film every single number of cups, would you be upset? Or do you want to see all of those plus the page, queen, king, knight, and the majors? Obviously everybody wants to see the majors. But do you want to see all of the minors or just a select few is what I'm asking. Thanks for watching. I'll let you watch the rest of it without hearing my voice. And I hope you stick around and see the rest of these. Bye!
Thought I'd be the only one, that I belong with you by my side, but feelings collide in a city of broken dreams. All the things we used to do, just me and you. We never look back to watch all the tracks made in the city of empty streets.